Interested in a portable laser engraver? Then stick around because that's what we're looking at in this episode. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of James Dean Designs. If you're new to the channel and love CNC, make sure you hit that subscribe button in the corner to get all the latest videos. Now in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at a portable laser engraver, more specifically the Sainsmart Genmitsu LE-1620 single arm laser engraver. Now the reason I'm taking a look at a portable laser engraver is one, I'm running out of space in here anyway, so I haven't got much room, but also I'd had a couple of people message me about getting back to craft fairs, wanting to do personalised products for people that were passing by, and the links that they were sending me, to be honest, were to what I consider to be gimmick laser products. So if you're going to try and sell quality products, you need a quality laser engraver to back up the engravings that you're actually doing. Purely out of coincidence, Sainsmart released this around the same time, so it made sense to do a review because, to be honest, I look for any reason to make a video. Now I should mention as well, we also have the rotary roller system that goes with this, so you can engrave things like glasses and stuff, and I'll cover that in another episode. But what we're going to be focusing on today is taking a look at the specifications of that machine, getting everything built, and then doing some test cuts and test burns at the end to see what the product is actually capable of. As always, timestamps will be down below with links in the description area. Definitely do check it out, that's where I put all the useful information that you'll need throughout the video. But for now, let's move on, take a look at the specifications of this machine and get started. So let's talk about the numbers. Now, as you've probably already guessed, with it being called a 1620, the work area on paper is 160mm by 200mm. Now, I think Sainsmart are being very conservative with this. I think the work area is actually 180mm by 220mm, which is an extra 20mm on each axis. And for the consumer, that's brilliant because we get a bigger work area in the same machine. Now the footprint of this is 410mm by 410mm at 160mm high, so it is quite small, and the weight is just 2¼ kilograms, making it perfect to be portable, as I said earlier. Now let's take a look at the machine itself. It is a single arm laser machine, which just adds to that low weight and keeps it portable, and both of the axes are driven by belts. Now one of the big advantages to belt driven machines is they can achieve higher acceleration values, which is just perfect for laser work, as opposed to something like the screw driven CNC machine behind me. They have slightly lower acceleration values, and that is exactly why this uses belts. Now the machine itself has 2 limit switches, and what that means is we can do homing. Homing is useful for being able to always return to the same position, and if for example you have a power cut, as long as you've noted down the coordinates, you can always return back to the same position that you started from. Now we also have the laser on this. Lasers can be quite confusing because manufacturers sometimes put out different values, either the input or the output, and what often can happen is people get lower powered lasers than what they were expecting. Good companies like Sainsmart, they give you both values, and in this case we have a 20-watt input and a 5.5-watt output. Now what that actually translates to is we can engrave on a lot of different materials: plastics, acrylics, we can do woods, bamboo, it even says we can do metal as well. You can do things like leather, and you can do a little bit of cutting. I should stress that diode lasers are typically designed for engraving, not cutting, but this can cut up to 3mm of basewood in one pass. Now when people are talking about cutting with lasers, they're often referring to plywood. Plywood isn't great for cutting because it's got the glue in between the different layers of wood, and so it doesn't cut through that as efficiently, whereas basewood is much better for cutting with a laser. Now if we spin this round, we can take a look at the control board. Now it has a little switch on here which is very useful. We can do a test fire with this switch. So when we're positioning the laser, we press that in once and it will turn the laser on at a low value to allow us to get the exact position that we're after. We can also press it down for a longer period and it will do a homing sequence and return to the far corner where the limit switches are activated. Now the only other thing I should really say about this is the Z-axis on the laser is a manual adjustment, which means we have this dial at the top here to be able to lower it and higher it down as we need to in order to set the focus. So now we've taken a look at the numbers and specifications, let's see what you actually get in the kit and how easy this machine is to get set up. So I'm not going to dwell on the unboxing for too long, but as we've typically come to expect from Sainsmart, everything was extremely well packaged within that white foam to keep everything safe. Now we have the usual things we would expect to see: the instruction manual, the safety glasses, obviously very important, the power pack. There's no UK plug in this one, but I won't hold that against them because it's easy enough for me to resolve. We have a USB cable for connecting it up to a PC or laptop. We have a memory stick which will contain some test files. We have the height stop to control the depth of the laser from the material. I'm not sure what this dry board marker is for. I'm sure we may find out once we open the instructions up, but that does seem a bit of an anomaly at this stage. Now when it comes to the machine itself, this is looking very simple to assemble. We only have a handful of bolts within the bag. 4 of those are to attach the laser to the arm, so that only leaves a couple to attach the arm to the main base of the machine itself. I like the fact they've actually marked up what is the Y and the X axis on this, because that could get a little bit confusing. Everything feels pretty solid, so it's looking good so far. We have the laser, obviously extremely important, and we have 2 pieces of scrap material. So everything is there that we would expect. Let's move on and get it assembled. So assembly for this is going to be super easy. We literally have 6 bolts, 4 for the laser, 2 for the arm, and a few zip ties to help keep the cables in place. They also provide some rubber feet to go on the bottom of the frame, and they also supply 1 spare bolt of each kind. So don't think because you've got 2 bolts left over that you are missing something. So we've got the Allen keys and the bolts already ready. We're going to start by attaching the laser while this is laying flat, just because it's a bit easier than trying to do it once it's in place on the arm. So we'll take the M3 bolts and we're going to get this in place now. As always, get the 4 bolts in loose and then tighten them up at the end once everything is in position. Now we'll move on to the longer M5 bolts to hold the arm in place. So we're just going to place this on top. There is a groove already in, so we can just drop this into the groove, align it roughly towards the back, and the 2 holes should align on top. We can then drop the bolts in and begin to tighten them up. We'll then connect the stepper motor. One side of the connector has 2 little lines on it. This goes in the slot underneath. So we'll fold that over and push that in gently, making sure that it's seated well. Next, we flip the machine over and we're going to connect the laser to the control board. There are 3 ports on here. We need to focus on the 2 bottom ones. Fortunately as well, these are different sizes, making it very easy for the connections. Now the cable needs to come underneath the arm and from the side of the stepper motor. We'll connect the one for the laser first, which is the bigger connector, and we'll put that over on the right hand side and push that in and make sure it's seated well, and then we'll connect the smaller one for the fan on the left hand side, and we'll just push that in as well and make sure that's seated correctly. Excellent, all connected up. Next we're going to add a few zip ties just to secure the cables. Now it's already secured in place just below the stepper motor, so we're going to put 1 zip tie just below and 1 zip tie just above those to hold the laser cable in place as well. And then use a pair of snips to take the loose ends off. Next we'll secure the laser cable at the other end. Now what you'll want to do is push the laser as far away as possible, put a slight loop in this, and then put a zip tie through the holders. The reason for this is so that it doesn't apply unnecessary pressure every time this is moving back and forth. And again, just snip the end off. And there we have it. I told you that would be extremely easy to set up. Now at this point, go around and just check everything is moving as you expect. Check that nothing is too tight or equally too loose. Check all the different axes. Obviously the Z axis is manual wind up and wind down, and also check the Y axis as well. Now these do run on belts, and there are ways to adjust the tensions if you need to. For example, if you feel the belt is too tight, you can slacken these bolts off and readjust the belt accordingly, or vice versa. If it's too loose, you can put tension on it by pulling it away. Similar with this plate on the back here, we can slacken this off and adjust the belt for the Y axis the same. So I think we can all agree how easy that was to set up. We're now going to move on, get it connected to the PC and start to do some testing with it. But before I do so, I just want to mention a couple of things. For software, Lightburn without a doubt is the best software available for doing laser work. You can design in it, there's lots of functions in it. You can also run your machine at the same time within the same piece of software. However, there is a small cost associated to it. It's well worth the money, but for that reason, we're going to use Laser GRBL today, which is a free piece of software that can run your laser and has a few basic functions within it as well, which we'll partially cover within the video. But as I say, if you are really into your laser work, definitely do consider Lightburn because it is the best option out there. The other two things I need to mention are about health and safety. We are going to be running a laser. Make sure you wear your glasses and make sure nobody else walks into the room while you're running the laser, because it can obviously damage your eyes. The other thing is the smoke and fumes that come off as we're burning stuff like MDF and plastics can be harmful, can be poisonous. So again, make sure you've got extraction or in a well ventilated room. Now let's move on, get that set up and start to do the fun stuff. So two things to do before we start. Make sure the USB stick that was provided with the laser is plugged in, and also make sure your laser is connected up to both the power and the USB cable, and the USB cable is also connected to the PC. Now we're going to go ahead and open up the files on the USB stick, and they should look something like this. The first thing we need to do is install the driver for the laser. So we're going to go into the driver folder, we're going to open up this file. And we're just going to go through the various steps, clicking next and install. We'll let this run through. And once it's finished, we get given a message to say it's all gone successful. So we'll click OK and we'll close this down. We're going to come back out and go back up one level. And then we're going to come down to Laser GRBL and click on the install exe file. Now you just click next to the various screens and it will install everything. I already have it installed, so I'm just going to click cancel for now. Now because we've installed the driver, your PC should be detecting the laser, and what we can do to check is come down to the start menu, type device manager and click on this option. Once in here, we can come down to ports, expand this menu out, and we should see something that looked like the driver that we just installed. This confirms that it is installed and it's detecting the laser. The other important information that we need to know is the COM6, the communication port number 6. We need to make a note or remember this, as we'll need it shortly within Laser GRBL. So we'll click X and come out of this, and I'll now open up Laser GRBL from my desktop. I'll maximise this. Now if you haven't done so at this point, make sure your laser machine is turned on. Now in this top left hand corner we can see COM, and it currently says COM6. When you drop this down, you'll have a list of options of things connected to your PC. Now as we've just seen in the device manager setting, I need COM6, so I'm going to select that to begin with. We also need to check the baud rate. It should say 115200 as default. If yours doesn't say that, change it to this number and it should just allow everything to connect. So now we've changed these settings, we're going to click the connect button to the right hand side of this, and this should allow our PC to now talk to the laser. That little noise signifies that everything is connected, and the fact that all the controls have come to life is an easy way to see that it is all working. What I would suggest doing at this point is just make sure that you can use the controls and it moves the head around as you expect. So just make sure this step is set to something low like 10, and just move it around and make sure everything does what you expect it to do. So there we can see I've sent it right, back, left and pulling it now towards the front. So we know everything is working as it should do. I will just quickly explain. This bar on the right hand side is to control how far it moves every time you click one of these buttons. The bar on the left is to control the speed and how fast it will move. Now Laser GRBL is a very simple tool, but I will just run through some of these buttons at the bottom. The first one allows you to reset the machine. This is useful if you've triggered the limit switches or you're just having a bit of an issue. You can click this and it's basically like turning the power on and off. The next one is to home the machine. Obviously when you want to use the limit switches, this is the button that you'll click to run the homing sequence. if you trip the limit switches by mistake, you will need to unlock the machine with a combination of using this unlock button and the reset button. And the final one is to set the 0, or to set where we want the job to start. This will come to life shortly once we load a piece of work in. So we're going to head up to File and click Open. And we're going to head over to the USB drive. Now there are some test code files in this folder. The one is for cutting through basswood, and the second one is a fairly complex photo conversion. Now as we're just doing a bit of a test burn at the moment, we're not wanting to cut through anything, we're not going to use this, and the sketch, if I'm honest, is a little bit complex for our first test. So we're going to come back up a level, we're going to come into test pictures, and we're just going to load in this Sainsmart logo. On this screen we're presented with a few options of how we want Laser GRBL to try and interpret the image, and more importantly how we want it to output the cutting paths or the burning paths for the laser. We've got a few different options here. I'm not going to talk through all of them, but I'm just going to leave it on this vectorize, and basically what that's doing is trying to convert the photo that we just loaded into a vector. And as you'll see from this red line running around all the edge and in the middle, the red line is where Laser GRBL is going to attempt to create a cutting path or a burning path for us. Now there are some extra options down here. The filling is probably one of the important ones. You've got a few different options. Now as we can see, once we just select horizontal, what this means, it's going to try and fill all the middle of the shape as well as doing the outline. Now as I say, this is just a very quick test, so I'm going to leave it on no filling, but you have got lots of options if you want to try and fill the middle of this, such as zigzag, diagonal, but yeah, we'll leave it on no filling for now. And that just means it's going to outline the shape. So we'll come down and click next, and we're presented with another screen. The first option it gives us is to take a look at the speed. Now 1000 millimeters per minute is a good starting point for most things, especially when you're not used to the laser, so we're going to leave that as it is. You have a few settings here for how it expects to turn the laser on. We want dynamic power. And then we have the minimum and maximum. This relates to your $30 and $31 settings on your GRBL control board. 99% of the time you will keep these settings the same to match your control board. The control board on this laser has the X max of 1000. If for any reason you never want to run your laser at 100%, you can always bring this down to something like 900, and it will only ever then run it at 90%. But again, for now we're going to leave this at 0 for minimum and at 1000 for maximum. The next area is looking at the size and position of the image. So I'm going to leave these as it is because the pieces of MDF that they give us to test with are 100 millimeters square, so we know that this should fit on it. And the last option is the offset, and this is regarding where we expect the job to start. Now by default it will always start down in the bottom left hand corner, but what we can tell it to do is to start in the center of the image. This can sometimes be useful, especially if you're working on different shapes or different types of material. For example, if you're trying to engrave into a circle, you will not be able to have a bottom left hand corner on a circle, so starting in the center is more convenient when you're doing something like that. But for now we're going to leave it as 0, 0, which is the bottom left, and click create. And what we can now see is it's converted this into a job for us. The start position is down here in the bottom left. It will travel up and then it will follow all the red lines until it's completed the job and finally returning back to 0, 0 or the start position. At this point we can now take a closer look at the laser and make sure that everything is set up correctly on that. We are going to do a test fire with the laser, so make sure you put your safety glasses on at this point if you haven't done so already. So with the laser roughly in place over the material, we're going to bring in the depth stop that comes with the kit. We're going to slide that slightly underneath the laser, and we're then going to lower the laser down just until it touches the top of that metal block. You don't want it to actually squeeze it, you just want it to touch it loosely so you can just about pull it out without it really catching. There we are. So now we know that the focus point to the material is set correctly. The next thing we need to do is position the laser so it's starting on the corner of the material. What we can do is use that test fire button that's on the control board that I've already mentioned. So if you reach over and press that once, hopefully the camera can now pick up the laser touching the top of the material. Now what you can do at this point is either move this manually just by dragging it across until we get roughly in position, or you can use the controls on Laser GRBL and move it left and right, back and forth, or in any direction that you need to. Sometimes it has advantages to use the controls in Laser GRBL, but other times it can just be quicker to move it about with your hands. Obviously, paying attention not to catch the fan or anything else that might cause issues. Now we can see that is sitting just over the corner of the job, so I'll press the test button to turn it back off. And that is everything set up, so we can come up to the play button just here and get the job started. And that noise at the end signifies that everything is done, and that's the end of our first job. So we've done a quick engraving. What I'm going to do now is a laser stencil out of some cards. So I've just fixed this down with a bit of tape. I'm going to place the Z stopper underneath, lower that down again until it's just touching it. You may notice I've took the MDF board out underneath because we're cutting through. I didn't want it burning onto the MDF. So we know we've got that set to the right height now. Let's go back over to Laser GRBL. We're going to go File, Open, and we're going to come to the desktop, and I've got a JPEG already loaded. Click Open. Now we can see on this some of the curved edges are a little bit rough and square. So I'm going to turn on the smoothing option. I'm going to take this up to about 1.5, and we can just start to see this now rounds off all of those curves and edges and just makes it all a bit smoother. So we'll click Next. Now I'm going to take the speed down to 900 just to be safe because we are cutting through, and I'm going to take the power down as well to 900, and this just makes it 90% maximum of power. I'm not a fan of always running the laser at 100% power, so I always try and keep it just below. Now we're going to take the size up to 120mm, and as we can see it links them both together and does it at the same time to keep it in proportion. We'll click Create, and there's our job created. What I'm going to do now is set the 0. I'll make sure I put my laser glasses back on, and then we're going to click play. So after doing the initial test on the machine to make sure everything's working as we expected, I wanted to put it through its paces a bit more and do some experimenting on different materials to see what we could get away with. Now what I should say here is I didn't really go into testing speeds with the machine. I just kind of took a guess and was hoping for the best, and things didn't turn out too bad. So I'll talk through what I did now. The first thing I did was a bit of a stencil cutout out of a thick piece of paper or thin piece of card, whatever you want to call it. Now there's no real burning around the edges, so it actually came out very nice. The next thing, I wanted to see what we could cut through. Now in the instructions it says you can cut up to 3mm basewood. I only had 2mm basewood, so I started by doing the little Sainsmart man that is in the test files, and that came out really well again. I think I took, because this is 2mm, I took the speed down to 200mm per minute at a strength of 80%, I think it was, and it cut through pretty well. There's a little bit of burning, but that's obviously to be expected when you're using a diode laser. So after that I thought let's take it up a step, and I started to cut this head. If I can just grab it, there we are. Now this actually came out really well. There was a couple of bits that didn't quite cut, but that was because the wood bowed as it was being cut due to the heat. But yeah, that's as a result of the wood, not the laser. So after I got it cut, I sprayed it black, and yeah, really impressed with how that came out. Ideal little things to add decorations to stuff. Next I wanted to experiment with some metal. So what I did was spray painted a little piece of mild steel metal. Actually first I sanded it back, then spray painted it black and engraved the Sainsmart logo over the top of it. And again this came out really well. Now technically, you know, we're just burning off the paint, but it gives a great effect because you've got the metal coming through on the paint. The edges are nice and crisp, so it did a really good job on that. The final thing I did, which you might just be able to see on the camera, is the acrylic engraving there. Now I found out what the marker pen was for that is provided with the kit. When you're doing things like shiny surfaces or clear acrylic, you can use the dry board marker to scribble on it and engrave over that. You can also use something like painter's tape because the diode laser passes straight through clear materials, So you essentially need something to catch the light in order to make it burn. Now on this example I did both the dry board marker and the painter's tape, and the dry board marker came out really well. The painter's tape not so much, but as I say, maybe that's down to me not experimenting with the speeds. I either should have gone a little bit faster because it being thicker than the dry board marker. But the dry board marker did a really great job. I wasn't expecting much from it, but yeah, it's come out really good, nice and crisp, and as you can see it can work easily to make these LED acrylic lights. So it's time to do the review, and I always have to state at this point, I'm not sponsored by any of the company's products that I feature on my videos. It's just my opinions based on the time that I've spent using them. Now I'm going to start today talking about the negatives, because there is only one, and it's partly related to me being clumsy. I'm always knocking and banging things. Now one thing when I was moving this about, or when I was pouring material on, I caught this front leg quite a few times. With it being acrylic and having a couple of slots in it, there's a bit of a flex point at about halfway, and every time I knocked it I was really worried that it was going to break. Now fortunately it didn't, and that's an attribute to how strong the acrylic actually is, but I was thinking, well, it could be made thicker, it could be out of metal. The more I thought about it, it's kind of counterproductive, because that just adds to the weight of the machine, and the whole point of this is to be lightweight. The other thing I was slightly concerned about this one arm design is that when the laser is fully extended out like this, I was thinking, well, what's the counterbalance like? Is that going to vibrate and shake about as it's engraving? Well, actually no, because the stepper motors and all the weight is at the back and the legs are quite long, there's no vibration or anything as it's moving about. So, you know, it really is a good build, and you know, it's what we've come to expect from Sainsmart. This just worked straight out of the box. I didn't have to go around adjusting any of the belts, adjusting any of the wheels. So if you're new to this type of thing, it's the exact type of machine that you want, that you don't have to fiddle with things to get it working. As I say, straight out of the box and set up in a very short time. Now it is 160mm deep, making it very small, and that's ideal to be able to, you know, put away on a shelf, underneath a unit, even in a drawer. The laser itself, 5.5 watt, so it is pretty powerful for the size of the laser. As we've seen from the experimenting I've been doing, there's lots of materials, you know, you can engrave or cut with, and you know, I've only scratched the surface. There are tons more this machine can do if you continue to experiment and play with it. Now let's talk about the setup of the machine itself. People are going to comment and say, well, I've seen a laser with a bigger cutting area for a similar price. If cutting area is one of the main things you're looking for, then this is obviously not the laser for you. If you need a big cutting area, then go and look at other full frame lasers that accommodate that. This is designed to be a lightweight portable machine, and that is exactly what it is. So I guess my finishing comment really is, if you're after a small lightweight portable machine, this should definitely be at the top of your shortlist. So the only thing really to say before I wrap up the video is, if you are engraving or cutting with a laser, make sure you got air assist going on in some form, whether that's a fan blowing the smoke away or a direct jet of air from a compressor or a fish tank pump. It just makes it much more efficient, and you will get better results whenever you're using a laser with air assist. Now that is everything for the video. I'm going to continue to use this and experiment with it, so if you've got any questions, do ask down in the comments section below, and I'll get back to everyone as quick as I can. I'll try and put links in the description to the various files that I've used, like the Fox cutout that I've got. Now if you did find it useful, please give the video a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel if you're not doing so already. Thank you very much for watching. The final thanks always goes to my patrons for keeping this channel going. If you want to get involved, check out the links in the description area. I'll see everyone on the next video.